Okay, here we go. Welcome everybody. We're going to get started, and for today we're going to be working on our spines. So we're going to be looking at all the weird and wonderful things that our spines need to do. And so just like we do every week, I want you guys to make sure you're nice and warmed up. This one is going to be nice and gentle. We're not doing anything extreme today, but just make sure that you're a little bit warm while you're listening to me talk. So if that's swinging your arms around, jumping jacks, marching around the room, whatever it is, just so you have just a little bit warmed up, instead of some of you have come straight from just sitting all morning at your desk. So for those of you who haven't met me, I'm Holly. I am a movement coach and now also a member of the physiotherapy team at Tanumi Integrated Health. My new role starting up, very exciting. Today, what we're going to be doing is working on movement coaching, which is what I do. I help people who are active, who have hard to resolve injuries, get their lives back by teaching them to move better. And I do that by teaching your skeleton and your joints and your bones what to do so that your muscles have their marching orders and they know what they're supposed to do. And that's what we're going to be doing today, is working on your spine, all of those joints from your pelvis all the way up to your neck, and all the things that they're supposed to be doing. So one thing that I want you to get used to me talking about is the concept of the oppositions that happen in your body. So in our spine, we have a whole bunch of joints that are going on, but if we look at it in a much simpler way, we can look at things in oppositions. So like the cogs inside your watch, where something is going in one direction and something else is going in the opposite direction. So we have these opposites that are happening, and they happen within our body, all the way from our toes, all the way to our skull, all of these oppositions that are happening. So instead of worrying about what every single joint is doing, we're just going to be talking about 3 different pieces of our body that are in opposites today. We're going to talk about our pelvis, our rib cage, and our skull. And we want all of those working with a line of gravity going right down the middle of them. And so we're going to talk about these cogs that go, and if I could with my fingers, where the cogs intersect, and so they go into opposite directions. So we want our pelvis going one way, our ribs going another way, and the skull going this way. And if you're observant, you'll notice the skull and pelvis are going one way, the rib cage is going the opposite way. But not only do they go in this direction, if I flip it this way, they're also going in this direction. So if I think about everything going forwards and back, something's going forward and something is going back. Then if you look to the side, something's going to the left and something's going to the right. So they're going in oppositions that way. And then if we look from a bird's eye view, from the top to bottom, things are rotating in oppositions. So that seems like a whole bunch of different things going on, but we're going to work on those one at a time. And so for today, what we want to do is just focus again on just our one thing that's important to us, not all of the little details, all the cues that I give you. Just see which one rings true for you and which one makes sense in your body, and start focusing on that. But that's why you have the video. You can go back and watch it again for a whole week. So we're gonna use just a bare wall. That's all that you're gonna need, just your body and a bare wall. And we're going to start working on these oppositions that are happening in our spines. So the first one we're going to do is all of the forward and back motions. So I'm going to invite you to stand up and put your back against the wall. And I'm going to use this wall because it's easier for you to see when I'm side on for you. And we're going to stand up against the wall. And what we want to do is we're going to stand close enough to the wall that if you had your heels against the wall, you'd be working hard to stand up. We don't want to work hard to stand up. We just want to use this as a prompt, just like gravity going straight up and down in our bodies. So we want to be up against the wall in a way that has our heels right underneath our hip sockets, our ribs right on top of our pelvis, and then our skull right on top of our ribs. So 3 points of contact here. This is always the most important thing. Rule number 1, 3 points of contact, somewhere on your bum, somewhere around your shoulder blades, and the back of your skull, if that is comfortable for you. If not, you can just let your head free float. Now we want to talk about these oppositions that are happening. So we're going to start with your pelvis, just one thing at a time. So with our pelvis, we need to be able to tilt our pelvis forward and back. So tilting our pelvis forwards means that the bones, if you find the bones at the top of your pelvis, those are going to go down and forward. It's going to be increasing the curve in our lower back, Or if it helps you to think in the opposite way, think about your tailbone going up the wall. So we're just going to focus on that first. What does it feel like for you to tilt your pelvis forward? So these bones at the top start going down towards the ground, tailbone going up the wall. And just get used to that tilting action and what that feels like for your body. Just letting everything go that needs to be let go in order to find the freedom to be able to tilt your pelvis forward. What you'll feel is that this set of bones here, your big leg bone and your pelvis, that angle is going to get smaller. And you're going to feel some opening happening at the back as your tailbone starts to go up the wall. So tilting forward. Remember, we want to do things that make our body feel comfortable, not things that go into an extreme that's making you feel symptoms coming up. Anything that's bothering you, you're always the boss. Only go so far as your body says this is okay. So with our pelvis, we want to be tilting forward. We can talk about the tilting back in a moment. I want to move up to the next cog. So remember, we had one thing going this way, my pelvis is going this way, then my chest, my rib cage is going to go the opposite. So if my pelvis is going this way, it's tilting down, my rib cage is going to tilt up. So let's not worry about the pelvis for now, let's just focus on the rib cage. So if you find your breastbone there, if you lift your chest, your breastbone is going to face up towards the ceiling. So we're just going to focus on what it's like to tilt the ribs up so that the ribs are facing up towards the ceiling. Opening up the ribs at the front here. You'll probably feel your back slide down the wall as you tilt and roll that cog so that your rib cage is going up. So getting used to that tilting the rib cage to face towards the ceiling. Seeing what you can let go of. Can you completely let go of your belly to allow this space to happen? Can you let yourself relax enough to open along your collarbone to allow this space to be possible for you? Tilting. And then we'll just do one more. Finding that space at the front to tilt your rib cage. Now the next piece, we're going to move up to your skull. So I'll just pan up a little bit. Now with your skull against the wall, of course, I'm looking at you as I'm demonstrating. But as we were saying, the pelvis is going this way. The ribs are going this way. The skull is going to go the same direction as your pelvis. So it's going to go forward. Now, if you find the spot on the wall where you're feeling the most pressure with your skull, that's what we want to pay attention to, the change that's happening in the pressure in that spot. And what we want to do is, it's going to feel kind of like you're tucking your chin, but what I don't want to do is have you suddenly get stuck there. What I want to do is have sort of a gliding up and back feeling as you allow your skull to glide up the wall. So we're going to feel as our chin tucks in, our skull is going to glide up the wall. And of course that changes my voice because it's changing the structures in the front in my throat. And we're going to feel our skull, then the back of our neck get nice and long as we allow our chin to tuck in, and our skull is going to be tilting forward. Now, if you're somebody who has this kind of rounded posture, this may be unusual for you to be making this shape, but we want to start getting used to first having our head being comfortable resting on the wall as we move our rib cage, and then being able to incorporate the skull being able to make the shape that it probably doesn't spend much time in at all. So we want to feel that idea that the skull is tilting forward as you maintain contact with the wall. You'll feel like your chin is tucking under and the head is going to be gliding up the wall. Just allowing that space to be created in the joints in the back of your neck, creating space between your skull and your neck, which is something we don't get a lot of chances to experience right now. You may feel this going all the way down in between your shoulder blades, giving you a new experience there. And then just one more. And now what I want to invite you to do is add all three of those together. And for many of us, when we learn to do this, all the wheels fall off the bus, and that's totally okay. We just want to start the process of building these together. And like I said, your one thing, maybe for you, the new thing was your skull. Maybe it's just being able to tilt your pelvis, and that's totally okay. But I'm going to prompt you through all three of them, so when you're ready, you can start building these together. So we started with the pelvis tilting forward. So let's just get used to that tilting the pelvis forward, feeling the curve in our lower back get larger, tilting forward. And then with our rib cage, we had our rib cage tilting up. So our breastbone is facing the ceiling, and we're getting some opening at the top, on top of our abs, where our ribs are at the bottom. So adding those two together, tilt your pelvis forward and lifting your chest. And of course, having your skull facing the ceiling or facing your skull against the wall. I'm just looking at the video to make sure that you can see what I'm demonstrating. So then the third piece is with our skull. So our skull is going to slide up the wall, getting length from the back of our neck, feeling our chin tucked together. So as I tilt my pelvis forward, I lift my chest and I allow my skull to slide up the wall. So we want to put those three together and just come back to your resting position and start again, tilting the pelvis, lifting the chest, and tucking your chin. Being able to experience building all three of these together, because for many of us, we have lost this sense of connection between the three cogs, between the big pieces of our body like that. So just one more of those. And then we can talk about reversing the equation, because of course we tilt forward and back. So we need to be able to tilt each of these pieces and be able to do both of them equally as easily. So let's talk about the flip side. Again, we're going to have the same thing. The pelvis will be tilting one way, the rib cage will be tilting opposite, and the skull will be tilting the same as the pelvis. So we have been tilting the pelvis forward. We're now going to tilt the pelvis back. So this is going to feel like tucking your tail under or lifting these bones at the front, feel them lifting up and into your belly. So let's just get used to that in your 3 points of contact on the wall. First with the pelvis, feeling us tucking under. You're going to feel your lower back go in towards the wall as you tuck your pelvis under. And feel all of those joints at the back of your spine travel in towards the wall. So tilting our pelvis under. You may be experiencing a change, a shift in your pressures in your feet, which would be good. Just start checking in with what kinds of things your body notices as we do these movements. So one more, tucking your pelvis under. And then let's move up to what your chest is doing at the same time. So before we had your chest lifting, now we're going to have your chest dropping. And the way I like to think about this is those superhero movies where you get punched in the chest and then they fly across the room like this. It's kind of like this feeling. So we want to be able to drop our breastbone down towards the ground. So let's focus just on that piece. So we're going to drop our chest, remembering keeping that pressure with your head against the wall, allowing our chest to drop. And what you'll probably feel is that the pressure against the wall on your rib cage is going to slide down or roll down to the lowest ribs and then come back up to wherever your resting position is. And just feel the weight, the pressure against the wall rolling down. For many of us, we have trouble making this shape because we spend a lot of time in a shape similar to this, but we're not actually good at getting into this shape. So being able to drop your chest and round the upper spine while keeping the skull against the wall. For many of you, you'll probably want to do this. but we want to keep that opposition. Remember, those three different parts are moving in oppositions, being able to drop your chest. And then just one more. And then we can move up to the skull. So remember, we had all of those opposites. And before, when we were lifting our chest, we were tucking our chin and getting length in the bottom or the back of your neck. So we're going to do the opposite now. And what I want you to do is allow your eyes to look up towards the ceiling and letting your chin rise up, but without losing contact with the wall. Now I have my ponytail in the way. And so what we're going to do is looking up towards the ceiling and let our head glide along the wall. And come back to your resting position. You're going to feel your skull go down the wall and get some length along the front of your throat. And then come back to your resting position. So being able to make this shape is also one that we're missing because we spend a lot of time like this, but not necessarily like this. Those are two very different experiences for your body. Being able to have the oppositions with the line of gravity going right through your body, that's the way our body's designed to move. So we're reintroducing, rewilding ourselves back into that configuration. Feeling the length across the front. Maybe some new experiences for your neck. And then just one more of those. And then we're going to build all three of those together. So we had our pelvis tucking under. We had our chest dropping down. And we had our eyes looking up towards the ceiling. So let's start with the pelvis. We're going to tuck our tail under. We're just getting used to tucking the tail under, feeling your lower back travel towards the wall, tucking your tail under. And then we're going to drop the chest. So you're going to be bringing these 2 points together. You're going to feel like your belly button is traveling up as your breastbone comes down to meet it. And then don't do like me where I'm losing my skull and just trying to see if I'm demoing the way I want. So those two together, and then with our skull, as our chest drops, we look up to the ceiling. So being able to drop your chest and have your skull stay on its axis with everything else. The important experience for our bodies to get. So being able to tuck your pelvis under, drop your chest, and lift your chin up towards the ceiling. All the new experiences that come along with being able to do that. And just one more. Good job. So shake it off. Just go for a little walk around the room. No expectations. Just let your body decide what it wants to do with that new information. And for those of you that are new, my work is mostly based on the gait cycle, so the way that we walk. So whenever we do these kinds of exercises, I want to put them back into a real world experience in terms of our gait cycle. So I'm going to put us into a pattern in the way that we walk. So what I'd like to do, let's bring this down. We're going to go into, doesn't matter which one, choose a foot to put forwards. And I want you to be in your regular step size. So this isn't yoga class where we're in one of these warrior positions, just your regular step size. And what we're going to do is we're going to work on the part that we started with, which is tilting your pelvis forward, lifting your chest and tucking your chin. And we're going to do that when we walk, when we bend our knee and put all of our weight into that front foot, that's when we're making that shape with our spine. So what I want to invite you to do is bring your weight forward so your pelvis is over the middle of your foot. And as you do that, we want to stay nice and tall. And I'm going to start introducing these three movements that we did. So as you shift your weight forward onto that front leg, the first thing I want to do is to tilt the pelvis forward. So that's increasing the curve in your lower back. Staying nice and tall, so not leaning forward or leaning back, keeping stacked straight up and down, and tilting your pelvis forward as you bring your weight over to the front leg. So we're going to tilt our pelvis forward as we shift onto that leg. getting used to this idea that tilting your pelvis helps you to create the shape that might be missing in your body. For those of you who have done some of my foot workshops, allow the front foot to completely relax underneath you to go into your pronation. Bringing your weight forward as you bend that front knee and bringing that pelvis tilting forward, staying nice and tall, not losing that stacked with gravity kind of position. The next piece we want is to tilt the ribs up, so having the breastbone facing the ceiling. So don't worry so much about the pelvis. If things fall off the bus, that's okay, just one thing at a time. What I want you to do is, as you bring your weight forward, I want you to rotate your arm bones back to help you lift your chest as you come forward. So rotating both of them so the thumbs rotate out, lifting your chest and keeping nice and stacked on top of that pelvis. Bringing your weight forward. If your pelvis has stopped tilting, that's okay, just one thing at a time. The breastbone faces towards the ceiling as we bring our weight forward. If your pelvis is tilting forward, bravo, that's great. Last piece of the puzzle is the head. So as I'm going forward, remember I want to get length along the back of my neck as my chin tucks in. So my skull is going to go in this direction. It's going to be tilting forward. So as we go forward, go back a bit more. As I bring my weight forward, I'm going to let my neck get long at the back, keeping stacked up nice and tall, getting long at the back. Nice long neck as I bring my weight forward onto that front leg. Maybe a new experience for you, being able to stack yourself up and have your chin tucking in, getting length at the back of your neck. And then just one more. Good. Shake it off. Let's give the other leg an experience. Maybe it's different on this side. We're all have our histories of what our bodies experience, and maybe one side's different than the other. So the first thing, regular stride. So no big yoga poses here, regular stride. Bringing your weight forward onto the center, the middle of that foot at the front, bringing your pelvis forward. As we do that, we want to tilt so that we're increasing the arch in our lower back. Those bones are going down and forwards for us. Allowing those bones to tilt, letting your pelvis tilt as you go forward. Just one thing at a time, just tilting the pelvis. Feeling the change that's happening in your lower back. And again, if this is too many things for your body, you're the boss. Don't go into something that's aggravating something. Go back to your wall exercises until you feel comfortable. Many of us, we end up doing this, sticking our bum out the back and not actually putting our weight forward. We want to make sure we're getting forward and tilting our pelvis. Second piece, lifting the chest. So we want our chest to lift as we come forward, but what we don't want to have happen is leaning back. So as we come forward, we're going to rotate those arm bones, rotate them out to help us lift our chest. And lifting your chest, getting your weight fully committed onto that front leg. Shifting your weight forward. My stomach is growling. Always happens on the left side there. Lifting the chest. And then just one more. And now we want to add our skull. So our skull is going to tilt forward. We're going to get length through the back of your neck as your chin tucks in. Forget the rest of it. If the wheels fall off the bus, that's okay. Shifting your weight forward, tucking your chin and lifting, getting length in the back of your neck. Coming back to a resting position and getting used to moving into this space. Opening up the joints at the back of your neck. as you come forward. And then just one more. So remember, we can always go back to the wall and start putting those motions back into our bodies. There's no need to do the Olympics of movement and be able to do them instantly. It's something that we want to build and build and build through a practice for it to become second nature. So the next thing I want to do is our side to side motions. So just like what we just did, which was forwards and back going in oppositions, we want our side to side to go in oppositions. And there's two ways that we do this in our bodies. One is with gravity going straight through, where we tilt, where everything is stacked straight up and down. And the other one is where we displace things side to side like this. So I want to play with both of those types of movements. The first one we're going to do is going to be the ones where we're stacked straight up and down. Now I'm going to stand on the wall facing towards you because it's easier for you to see. We're going to do the same setup that we had before. 3 points of contact without our heels close to the wall, just so that we can comfortably stand straight up and down. And we're going to start first with our pelvis. So what I want to do here is tilt my pelvis side to side, side to side. And the way I'm going to do that is I'm going to bend one knee to give space for my pelvis to tilt. So if you have this line on my pants, you can see that if I bend this knee, my pelvis tilts down on that side and comes up on this side. So we want to tilt our pelvis down on that side and then come back to resting, go to the other side. Tilt your pelvis down and up on this side. We're going to alternate bending and straightening one knee and just feeling what it feels like to tilt your pelvis on one side. And for some of us, we will feel that it's really easy on one side and not so much on the other. Or our pelvis wants to rotate away from the wall in order to make this happen. So any kind of rotating or shifting around, we want to clean that up and be able to, if you were in a tube, you couldn't disturb the outsides of the tube, are you able to tilt your pelvis down and up without disturbing the walls of that tube? So just being able to tilt where you are, tilting side to side, the bent knee side going down, straight knee side going up, and just going side to side. And just see what happens in your spine, your lower back, to be able to make these shapes. So we talked about the cogs happening in our spine, pelvis, ribs, and head, and this happening in all three planes of motion. So let's move up with our pelvis. If our pelvis is going down, and I want to stay with gravity, my rib cage has got to go this way. My pelvis is going down and up, then my rib cage has to go up and down. So let's move up to the ribs. And what we want to do is, I'm just going to pan up a little bit. We want to bend our ribs side to side. But what I don't want to do is just doing a nice stretch. I want to contain my head exactly where it is on the wall. And then I want to bend as if I had a skewer running straight through my breastbone, a weird image to have. But that's the point that I want to pivot around. That's right in the middle of my body. So let's see, without using your shoulders to boss you around and keeping your head nice and still on the wall, can you tilt your ribs side to side? See if your head is gliding side to side or it can stay where it is. So if your head is going along with you, it's a different shape being made in your spine than if you let your head stay still and have a much smaller but more precise movement in your rib cage. And for many of us, we find that a shoulder is bossy. The shoulder's doing the work, or that instead of bending side to side, we actually jut our rib cage out, which is what we're going to be working on next. We want to be able to do both of them. But let's see if we can do each one on their own. So tilting your ribs to the side. And then we can come up to our neck. We want to be able to tilt our head side to side without rotating or coming off the wall. So see if you can bring one ear down, the other ear up. While keeping, you can, this is going to look very strange, but if you put your finger on your nose is essentially the middle of your skull. And see if when you rotate, when you go side to side, is that the pivot point or is it somewhere else? And just see if it's more comfortable to one side than another. So just tilting your skull side to side. And for those who are observant, remember that your pelvis and skull went in the same direction. So now as we build these together, if I was to bend this knee, that side of my pelvis would go down. Now my rib cage, to keep me straight up and down, my rib cage needs to go this way. And then my skull needs to go the same way. So this ear is going down as this side of my pelvis is going down. So let's see if we can start building those together. Just starting with the pelvis, bending one knee at a time, tilting side to side, tilting side to side. And then see if you can build the rib cage into this. So I want to feel that when I bend this knee, I'm getting nice and long here as my rib cage bends away from that. So nice and long on the bent knee side and compressed in on the straight knee side. And then coming up and reversing it as I bend this knee, nice and long and short on this side. And just cycling between those two. Bending one knee, tilting the rib cage away from that bent knee. And just seeing if your body is cool with making this shape. And just one more. And then we can add our skull. So pelvis and skull, you think about your earlobe going down on the same side as the bent knee. And just see if you can start building those together. For many of us, this is when the wheels fall off the bus, and that's okay. Remember, it's all about your one thing. What's the most important thing for your body to start experiencing first? Come back to the videos later and start incorporating those pieces, one thing at a time. Maybe for you, your neck does not want to bend to one side, but it's really easy to bend to the other, as you can see in the video. Bending this way, not so comfortable. And that maps onto my injury history. There's a good reason for that. Something I work on every day. Okay, so just one more. And like I said, everything is about the gait cycle. So I'm going to put this into some context for your body. We're going to go back to, if you wanted to shake it off as you're listening to me set this up. We're going to go back to our regular step size. Choose a leg, it doesn't matter which one you're going to put forward. And we want to build all of these side to side motions. So we're going to still be bringing our weight forward, but what we want to do is feel that the pelvis is going to go up on the side that we're bending towards, right, the knee that we're bending, and it's going to go down on the back leg side. So as I come forward, this is my front leg. As I come forward, the pelvis is going to go up on that side and down on the side with the back leg. So just bringing your weight fully committed forward onto the middle of that front foot and letting your pelvis drop down on that back leg side. And just bringing your weight forward. Remember, stay nice and tall and just letting your pelvis hike up on this side and drop on the other side. If you're having trouble doing that, we can take the back leg arm and reach it up to the ceiling as much as we can to see if we can get some length on that side to let this side drop down. You'll probably get some new experiences in all those muscles down along the back of your pelvis as your muscles are dealing with the fact that your pelvis is moved out of its neutral alignment and it has a job to do now. It says, whoa, pelvis, that's too far, come back. So getting nice and long on this side, allowing that side to drop down. As we do this, we notice that this helps us bend our rib cage in the opposite way, which is our objective, is to bend your rib cage and close on this side and get long on this side. Line of gravity is going straight through your body now. The last piece of the puzzle is, of course, our skull. We want our skull to do this because our pelvis is doing this. So these are both going this in the same way. Easy way to do that is think of putting your ear on your arm as you come forward. It's going to ask your skull to tilt that way, just keeping your eyes on the horizon. And that will build all of these pieces together for you. Pelvis tilting down, ribs tilting this way, skull tilting this way. All three of those together, if your body's okay with this. If it's not, one thing at a time. And just reaching for the ceiling, getting length on this side, bringing your weight forward as much as you can. And just getting those oppositions, those cogs going. Good. Okay, let's shake it off. Go for a little walk. Other leg forward. Your regular step size again. We want to mimic real life here. And again, as we bring our weight forward, that front leg side, that side of the pelvis is going up. Other side is going down. So just coming forward and back, bringing your weight forward, stacked up nice and tall. Tilting your pelvis down on the back leg side and up on the front leg side. Going down and up. Getting used to this idea in your body of making these tilts happen. Again, if you're having trouble with that, we can take the back leg's arm up, reaching up for the sky, getting length on this side, and bringing some compression to this side. Getting nice and long on this side. Feeling the rib cage going in this direction. Redistributing those curves in your spine. And then the skull piece is, when you're ready, keeping your ear on your arm. Getting nice and long on this side. Pelvis tilting this way, skull tilting this way. Again, different sides of your body will feel different doing this. One side will not be so happy with it. We want to focus more on that side. Give it the experience it's needing. And then just one more. Good. And shake it off. Let your body decide what to do with that information. We're going to go back onto the wall again. I talked about the side-to-side actions going like this with gravity going straight through. The other shape we need to make is things going off axis. So things shifting side to side, kind of like feeling a box going along a conveyor belt. So things going nice and level, going away from one another. So if a pelvis goes this way, a rib cage goes this way, and the skull goes this way. So they're still cogs, they're just going in a horizontal manner. So we're going to start with your pelvis, with your resting position up against the wall. We want to find what are you resting against in the back of in your rib cage, where your skull is against the wall, and we want to maintain those points of contact. We don't want to budge from that spot. So find where you're feeling for you against the wall, and that's the spot we want to stay still as we move our pelvis. So this is going to feel like the flossing dance, and what we want to do is keep both knees straight, and we're going to send, if you had pockets on the outside of your pants, I'm going to send the pockets directly to the side. Like you're drawing a horizontal line with your bum against the wall. Hopefully not, but getting that sensation. And what we don't want to do is have our ribs and our head go along with us. We want to keep those perfectly still as we send our pelvis horizontally away. And that is like those conveyor belt ideas, that the pelvis is shifting along nice and horizontal. Then check out whether your pelvis wants to rotate to make that happen, or wants to come away from the wall to make that happen. We want to quiet those down and clean up that movement so that we can get our pelvis to shift underneath us as we keep our head and rib cage nice and quiet, shifting back and forth. For many of us, one side will be more jammed, stuck, uncomfortable, confusing, unable to move than the other, and that's okay. In later weeks, I'll be working on knee mechanics, ankle and foot mechanics, and that can help you unravel why that might be. Okay, so the other piece is moving our rib cage and our skull. These are going to be less important today. I don't want to overload you with too many things, but just for out of your own interest, we want to see if we can keep our head and pelvis still, and then just shift our rib cage underneath. So for some of us, we'll be sending our pelvis instead, or sending our head with it. We want to see if we can glide our rib cage, just out of curiosity. Not necessarily going to work on that today, but just for completeness. Gliding your rib cage side to side. And then being able to send your head side to side, which when I was training, I learned that being able to hold your cell phone against your head requires us to be able to make this movement. And many of us have lost this. We'll do a whole bunch of other funky things to do that. So that's just a gee, wow, let's see where we're at. Not going to worry about that so much today. But I'm going to take this movement, this shifting of the pelvis, and I'm going to put it into our walking mechanics again. So one leg in front of the other, your regular step size. And what I want to do is, again, when we were on the wall, we wanted our rib cage and our skull to stay perfectly still. And we want to move our pelvis underneath. So I'll invite you to keep both of your knees straight. We're going to bring our weight forward, but not so much like we did in the last exercise. I want you to think about your weight going more of a diagonal. So you're going to hip check over on a diagonal to the front leg. It's going to look like this. I'm going to keep my ribs and my skull behind, and I'm going to send my pelvis away from me. So just sending your pelvis. Allow your back heel to come up a little bit to allow your pelvis to stay somewhat level, and just shift your pelvis underneath your ribs. So just keeping my ribs and my skull as still as I can. Can I move my pelvis independent of my rib cage and skull? Keeping both knees straight if you can. And for many of us, we have trouble doing this. This is the fascinating part of our gait cycle, where we take that leap of faith that we can step from one leg to the other and not fall on our face. We need to be able to take our center of mass, which is just above your belly button, and be able to take it over there and say, is it safe? Should I take a step before I send my whole body there? Let's test it out. See if this is okay. For many of us, we've completely lost this movement. Just one more of those. And then just shake it off. Switching it up onto the other leg. Again, your regular step size, no bigger, no smaller, no wider, no thinner. Keeping your chest perfectly still. We're going to take our pelvis on a diagonal towards that front leg as we keep our chest and our head perfectly still. So we're going to shift our weight, bringing that back heel up a little bit to allow ourselves to come forward a bit. Both knees straight if you can. And just shifting your weight while not disturbing your rib cage and your skull. Sending your pelvis over, sending out feelers. Is it okay to step on that side? Many of us who have had ankle sprains or any issues in our hips, we don't want to do this. We'll avoid this at all costs. Our nervous system has locked us down and said, don't put weight over there. Last time we did that was really bad. So now we just won't do that. We'll do something else until your body goes, that something else isn't working for me anymore. We want to reintroduce these and show your body it's safe to make these shapes, whatever the shapes you are doing with me, and say, it's okay. That was in the past. It's all good. We can do this again. And just one more there. Okay, shake it off. And we will move on to our third plane of motion. So we've talked about forward and back, things tilting in oppositions that way. We've tilted side to side, and now bird's eye view, rotating in oppositions. So this will be our last piece we're going to look at. What we want to do is, again, the pelvis will rotate one way, the ribs will rotate another way, and the skull will rotate the same direction as the pelvis. So they're going in oppositions like this. So we're going to set you up so that you can keep two of those still and move the bit in the middle. So I'm going to get you to go into your regular step size again, but we're going to turn out the back foot. So my back foot is going to be rotated in an angle like this. And the reason I'm doing that is that I want to be able to have my resting position with my pelvis facing the corner. So if I completely relaxed in this position, I put my weight equally between both feet, I'm going to rest, have no effort to face the corner. So we want to keep here, we're going to keep your pelvis and your skull still. So you're not going to be able to look at your video, you're just going to trust your ears and listen to my words. I'm going to have you keep your pelvis and your skull facing the corner. You're going to have your hands resting on your arms or your rib cage. And I'm going to get you to rotate your rib cage to face the front without disturbing your skull or your pelvis. And so what this is doing is it's teaching you to have that opposition that the pelvis and rib cage are doing, or sorry, the pelvis and skull are doing one thing, and your rib cage is doing the opposite in that rotational configuration. So those rotations are also necessary cogs to help us teach our body what it needs to do. These cogs are incredible ways of loading and unloading tissues in very efficient ways to take that energy that you've created, but the energy you've transferred into movement and bring it back into movement. So seeing what it's like to keep yourself as if you were in a tube and rotating, what kind of experience you get wringing out your spine doing this. And then we're going to change it up a little bit. I'm going to get you to square that back foot up to the front. And I'm going to get you to keep your ribs and your head facing the front. And then I'm going to get you to rotate your pelvis to the corner. So just a different way of doing this, of keeping your ribs still and rotating your pelvis and your lower back underneath. See if those two are locked together or whether you can rotate your pelvis and keep your ribs facing the front. Curious experience to be able to get this opposition. Another thing that I find many people are missing is the ability to rotate independently throughout their spine. Now just one more of those. And again, one of those, so shake it off. One of those two configurations may be right for you. Just depends on what you need. Again, it's all about what you want to be working on, what makes sense for your body. Whether it's facing the corner or facing the front, you choose which one makes the most sense, mix and match them. So let's go to the other side, rotating the back foot on an angle so that when I rest, I'm facing the corner. I want to have my weight equally distributed between the front and back leg. And I'm going to have my hands on my chest, and again, trust my words, facing your pelvis and skull to the corner and rotating your body to face the front. And immediately my obliques go, what? For me, rotating my pelvis to the left is a challenge, again, because of my injury history. So by rotating my ribs to the right, I'm essentially rotating my pelvis left. Do you think that logic through? So for me, this is a challenging one because opposing my pelvis and rib cage in this direction is not something that I do very well. And just check out whether your pelvis is actually staying nice and still, or whether it's wanting to go along for the ride. And see what you need to let go of or allow to have happen, so your pelvis can simply just rest there in space. Or maybe your neck just won't keep still. It wants to be locked together with your rib cage. Again, whichever one makes the most sense for you, that's the one to focus on. And then we can change it up. Pelvis facing forward as you square out your feet to the front. And we can keep your ribs still and rotate your pelvis to that corner that we just came away from. And for me, yep, obliques here, giving me some feedback that rotating my pelvis to the left is not something I'm a fan of. And just a few more of those. So again, whichever one makes the most sense for you, whichever one gives you the feedback you need or is the most challenging or confusing. Whoa, there's my stomach again. And just one more of those. Good, okay. Very good. So we have gone through all three planes of motion in terms of the tilting, rotating, twisting, and what weird and wonderful things our pelvis does. So those are the things that I wanted to teach today, which is essentially the cog action that's happening in our spine, and be able to reintroduce those back into our bodies. So I'm going to quickly recap those so that we remember what they are. The first one was tilting forward and back. So tilting my pelvis forward. And as I do that, as I tilt forward, I'm going to lift my chest. And then my skull is going to get length along the back of my skull. So tilting my pelvis forward, lifting my chest, and tucking my chin. And then the opposite is to tuck your pelvis under as you drop your chest. And then my skull, as I drop my chest, I'm going to look up towards the ceiling. So if we put those together, we have the tilting pelvis forward, lifting the chest, and then tucking and bringing these points together. And then we took those into our motions of shifting our weight forward, tilting your pelvis forward as you lift your chest, and as we tuck our chin and get length along the back of our neck. So being able to build those pieces together. Then we went to our side to side motions, bending one knee, tilting the pelvis down, rib cage going in opposition, and then the skull going the same direction as your pelvis. So getting those tilts going side to side, and then putting this into our walking pattern, taking this arm, the back leg arm up to help get length on this side as we let our pelvis go down on that side, our ribs go in this direction, and then keeping the head on the arm to get those oppositions happening. And then we talked about our shifting, so all of those horizontal motions, keeping your chest and head still and shifting our pelvis side to side as our knees stay nice and straight. And then putting this into our walking pattern, getting our pelvis going on a diagonal as we lift our back heel and shift our pelvis over. Our third one was all of the rotations happening from a bird's eye view. So standing with our back leg turned out and our pelvis and our skull facing the corner, and then rotating our chest to face the front. So getting those oppositions between our ribs moving in one way in opposition to our skull and our pelvis, or having our foot facing straight forward and then just moving your pelvis underneath your rib cage. So mix and match, play around with those and decide what is best for you, and have fun with your cogs. That's all we're going to do today. I am going to render this video and then I'm going to put it in a private link on YouTube. I will send you an email with the recording. And then if you kindly, please don't share with anyone who hasn't attended the class today. I've spent about 3 decades of time learning this and then spending all the time preparing these for you. So I would like it to only be shared with people who have attended or paid for today. If you don't mind, that would be great. The next 3 weeks, we're going to work on shoulders and arms and necks and all the weird and wonderful things that they need to be able to do to unlock the stuck patterns that they have. So if you want to go ahead and book for the next few weeks, that's going to be the topic. We're going to work on a whole bunch of things to do with moving all of those joints and the bones in relation to the rib cage, the shoulders, the arms, the wrists, the elbows, and your skull. So that is the plan. Thanks for joining me today. Hi to everyone who's new, welcome, and I will see you next week. Bye. I'll stop recording.